between 9 a.m. and 10 a.m. Events occur in real time.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome. It's Friday. It's the end of the week. It's Super Bowl weekend. That's right, folks. We are finally on the cusp of Super Bowl 56 after what's felt like an eternity waiting for the game. And not so much, and we talked about this yesterday, not so much the anticipation of the actual matchup. I think we're excited, obviously, because it's the Super Bowl. It does lack a little bit of what we've had in recent years, but these last 2 weeks specifically have been just pretty grueling in terms of trying to get to this point, because there's been news outside of the Super Bowl. There hasn't really been as much coverage of the actual game, or at least the perception from my point of view feels that way, unless you're going to fullpresscoverage.com, in which case you will see a whole hell of a lot of Super Bowl coverage there. Just check it out, and I encourage you to do so. But no, the build-up obviously is always kind of long and drawn out for any matchup. This one seems to have taken a little bit longer because there aren't as many, I guess, storylines to whet the appetite of folks out there. So, needless to say, we are here. We are ready for the game in just 2 days, and I think it's going to be a pretty entertaining one. But, John, before we get to that, I'll have to congratulate your guy, Aaron Rodgers, winning his 4th MVP. Although I do not recognize it personally, because despite the "I told you so's" that I got in my DMs last night, or not DMs, but in my mentions, um, the the vote of a relatively a very small group of people isn't going to change my mind on the things that I've been hammering home for months now, John. And I'm sure you're getting flashbacks to our conversations dating back to November. But my opinion is Tom Brady was absolutely robbed of the MVP last night. And on top of that, look, we accepted that once we saw the AP voting, we kind of understood where it was going to go. So it's not a surprise that he won. I mean, hell, I created the graphics that we posted on our Full Press NFL account hours before the actual event, because, well, it doesn't take, it's not that difficult to draw conclusions based on the AP vote, considering the voters are the same. But what shocked me, John, was that it was 39-10 out of 50 votes, and Cooper Kupp got 1. But the discrepancy, the gap between the two, I'm ashamed, John. I'm ashamed that this is the type of process that we go through to vote for MVP, because it's so clearly flawed. I mean, we're not talking about a guy like Aaron Rodgers had a phenomenal season, and no one's taking that away from him. But this is purely based on a narrative that was forged a couple months ago and just was not let go by the national media. I mean, I've talked about it before. I mean, Chris Collinsworth up there on national television, shamelessly campaigning for Aaron Rodgers, and making the case based on this idea that no one was close, which is a very damaging thing to do for public perception. So if you're a casual fan, and that's not a bad thing. I'm not using that as a insult. I mean, casual fans. That's what makes these sports great, is because you have a mix of passionate fans, and you also grab the attention of the fringe fans, and that's why football's so great and always gets great ratings. But if you're a casual fringe fan watching Sunday Night Football and you listen to Chris Collinsworth sit there waxing poetically about how no one's even close to Brady, meanwhile, just hours before that game, Tom Brady led a 14-point comeback and threw a game-winning touchdown in overtime. That's where the problem is, because right there, the perception is, oh, well, Aaron Rodgers is clearly the MVP. Well, fans aren't the only ones who look at that and just vote accordingly, or make their opinion made accordingly. Voters do it too. I mean, it's clear. It's very clear that that's what voters do, because if you're looking at it from top to bottom, everything that we talk about, Tom Brady was clearly the MVP last year. He threw more, he completed more, he produced more. I mean, that's the one thing that I'm hearing, John, is that, Aaron Rodgers' efficiency, he out efficient, he outproduced. No, he didn't outproduce, he didn't out anything. He underproduced relative to Brady, And what people are doing is basically giving him credit for things that he hasn't done. And that's where I really get, kind of bothered because, like, does it really mean anything? No. I mean, MVP awards really, at the end of the day, it's silly. It's all subjective. Again, it's essentially comes down to what 50 people think, and well, that doesn't necessarily give us the actual answer that we're looking for. I just, like I said, I think this one in particular was just such an absolute travesty when it comes to award presentation. And this isn't me being a Brady homer because last year I had no problem with Aaron Rodgers winning the MVP. I mean, I could sit there and make an outside case for Tom Brady, but I wasn't sitting here saying, "Oh, Aaron Rodgers doesn't deserve it." No, I'm pretty sure I even said on multiple occasions, Aaron Rodgers deserves it. Now, could I make it a devil's advocate argument? Absolutely. In this case, this year, it should 100% been Tom Brady, and it's amazing to me that it was so lopsided ultimately.
I thought it would be closer. Of course, when we saw how the AP voters voted for all pro teams, we knew it was going to be Rodgers pretty handily, as it was. Yeah, I think you make a case for both guys being MVP. They're both worthy of it. I don't understand the one vote for Cooper Cup, but so be it. Someone maybe threw in a protest vote that, hey, it doesn't have to just be a quarterback's award. Yeah, I mean, we've seen this in other sports too, and I do like to reference other sports. I mean, it was a couple of years ago where Giannis won his second MVP in the NBA, and he won in a landslide over LeBron. I believe it was 86 to 15. Kind of similar numbers, actually even wider than this vote. And I thought it should have been closer. It's just that people just kind of say. I wonder too if people start voting based on who they think's going to win. Like this even happens in politics, right? They're like, you know what, I'm going to vote for this candidate because he's probably going to win. Do they just want to be on the winning side? Is it more about
Even then though, John, I mean, go back. I mean, let's not forget that, like, a guy like for much of the season we're hearing about Jonathan Taylor, mind you, who didn't get a single MVP vote, being a better MVP candidate than Tom Brady. I mean, we heard that for weeks when Brady was tearing up the league. And then it was Cooper Cup, and then finally Aaron Rodgers finally had a nice stretch there at the end where he really, now, again, this isn't a nice, saying he didn't play a good season. No one's saying that, but it's a lot of recency bias. And to me, it's like if you're a voter, if you're an AP voter, like I feel like this is human nature, John. I mean, we've talked about this before, especially when it comes to like the Baseball Hall of Fame, specifically because they have so many damn voters that it's like, some of them are just like, oh yeah, right, I got to fill this out. Let me fill it out real quick. Okay, well, let me do this. Oh, well, Aaron Rodgers. Okay, Chris Collinsworth. I remember a couple weeks ago, Chris Collinsworth was just going on and on. Okay, Aaron Rodgers MVP, easy. I'm not going to get any backlash for that. I mean, and that's. I mean, I hate to say it, but I think that's how some of it goes. And sadly, it kind of.
Is this the first year this happened? Is this the first year this has happened because you have a strong disagreement with the results? I mean, can we go back to every other MVP vote and go?
Well, I mean, again, we'd have to go back and actually look at the. I mean, I wasn't doing this job 10 years ago, so there wasn't this investment into it. But I mean, going back into the recent, I mean, I could have made a case for Brady in 2016. I understand why Matt Ryan won it, and I didn't push back on that. Obviously, Tom Brady won in 2017. I was fine with that. 2018. I would have voted for Lamar Jackson, or I'm sorry, Patrick Mahomes, and then Lamar Jackson in 2019. Those were obvious choices. And like I said, last year, again, I could make a devil's advocate argument, but the obvious choice was Aaron Rodgers. So I feel like I've been very consistent with this. Although now that I've fought back at this year, I'm a Brady homer, and that's what I'm pushing. No, I mean, look, I may be a Brady homer, but that I feel like at least I can provide some objectivity to all this. And again, I've been consistent when it comes to how I view this MVP award. I just feel like this year in particular, and I'm sure there are years in the past where other candidates, not necessarily Tom Brady, were kind of robbed of an MVP. And in this case, I think it's very clear that he was robbed of the MVP, because you can't convince me that a zero 0.3 difference in QBR and marginal difference in some of these efficiency metrics make up for the 1,100 yards, 6 touchdowns, and 200 plus more attempts. It's silly to me, John. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really mean much because again, these are awards, and no one's gonna. You're gonna have some people sit there and try to make the case that because Aaron Rodgers won 4 MVPs and Brady won 3. Well, Tom Brady has more Super Bowl MVPs than Rodgers has regular season MVP. So I can
Mhm.
go to bed and sleep easy knowing that. So no, I mean, look,
I'll make you feel better. Since
sure.
he won Super Bowl 45 11 years ago, Aaron Rodgers has won 4 league MVPs and 7 playoff games.
Yes, and here's the thing too, John.
That'll make you feel better.
I would have to look up the exact numbers, but when it comes to, I think Brady has been a top 3 MVP finisher. I mean, a majority of his career. Whereas, and I would have to confirm this. So, if I'm wrong on this, I apologize. I have to double check the numbers. I saw this tweeted and I do kind of trust the source, but I haven't had a chance to verify it myself. But Aaron Rodgers, I think he either finishes first in the MVP or he doesn't even get into consideration. So they're stuck in that. So
He finished second or third in 2012, and he finished second or
no,
third.
didn't 2020? 2012 was
2012 was Adrian Peterson,
right.
Peyton Manning.
Right.
I think Rodgers got a few votes. And again, it's tough to decipher where you finish because it's only one vote.
Yeah, but they always obviously they do the vote breakdown. That's what I mean. Like the post vote reveal. Like obviously for MVP you're going to have 3 contenders. If you're number 4, you're not an MVP contender. You know what I mean? At that point.
Yeah, and if it's a unanimous choice, then no one else gets the vote.
Yeah, exactly.
Lamar Jackson was unanimous, and Brady was unanimous, I believe, in 2010. So,
and he wasn't unanimous in 2007. That should tell you all you need to know about the
right
about the.
That year. Who got? I mean,
I don't know. I don't even remember. But again, that was obviously more about personal vendetta than it was actual performance. But look, overall.
Do you remember Randy Moss was getting not Randy Moss himself, but there was some traction that, hey, maybe Randy Moss should be in play for MVP because he had the 23 touchdown catches, and that they were lethal together, obviously.
Oh, obviously. But that's the thing. I'm sorry for those, Cooper Kupp, but no, he wasn't. He was a phenomenal receiver, and I said this before. I thought him and Jonathan Taylor were more appropriate, and wide receivers and running backs are more appropriate for Offensive Player of the Year because I think that award is more about your production against your peers. So obviously, Jonathan Taylor and Cooper Kupp outproduced fellow running backs and wide receivers by a wide margin. So to me, that is Offensive Player of the Year worthy. Whereas again, I think MVP obviously favors quarterbacks for a reason because they're the most valuable. Like, I mean, I that drives me nuts is like when people sit there and pretend like how is this happening? Well, it's very obvious. The award favors quarterbacks because quarterbacks are inherently more valuable based on what they do. And that's not a hard concept to understand. So yes, a wide receiver is going to have to do quite a bit. And on top of that, not only will they have to do a lot, they will have to rely on a subpar across the board quarterback season. And that's again, fair or not, that's how it is. And look, I think it's fair. I mean, that's not a knock on wide receivers. It just kind of speaks to their value because as great as Cooper Kupp is, I mean, he had as great of a season as you could possibly have at the wide receiver position. And barely made an impact in this voting. So overall, though, the whole show, again, was just, I personally thought it was awful. I thought it wasn't funny. I thought it was just uncomfortable. It was clunky. They had this opening song, which was, it was fine until, again, Roger Goodell gets up there, and then this is the one stage of Roger Goodell where he's the dad. He loves everyone. He's Mr. Fair. He's going to be funny and fun. I just it killed the entire vibe for me. I'm sitting here thinking like, okay, they got this kind of funny song going on. You're getting people involved. Like, there was a moment where they were trying to, clearly he was singing and he put the mic to Gronk, and Gronk was supposed to say Gronk because it rhymed with the previous word, and he said Rob, and it was funny. It was like, oh, haha, okay, that was funny. Then it goes to Roger Goodell, and it becomes it was so bad, especially again coming off the heels of his press conference from the other day, it rubbed me the wrong way and it just irritated me. But maybe the only uh, uh, somewhat funny joke, and this is what's ridiculous is that the joke it was really forced. I mean, I get it because obviously Patrick Mahomes had a bad second half, but here I'll play it for you so you can hear it.
So mind blowing. Patrick Mahomes saw a picture of this outfit at halftime and forgot how to play football.
He's talking about Joe Burrow's Joe Namath like outfit where he's walking. Yeah. And it's like, okay, yeah, it was pretty funny. This is a kind of a it's funny because it's true meme, but at the same day, it was so forced, and it was like literally the only joke that I felt even came close to landing. And then it's like, then they pan to Travis Kelsey, and it's like, oh, Travis Kelsey's up. Well, I mean, look, it's true. I mean, what else are you going to say? He kind of did forget how to play quarterback in the second half, but I don't know. I thought the whole show was just it was just bad. It wasn't entertaining. There was no. It was too hot. I don't. Why do I care about Rebel Wilson and Jimmy Kimmel? Like, I just don't care. Like, why are they coming out like giving NFL honors? Like, I don't know.
Yeah. Award shows really don't do much for me anymore. Even the Oscars. I mean, they're so long, drawn out. They're so insular. Like it's all the inside jokes and so forth. I think if they could just tighten it up and do a better job of that it would be good. But the problem that you run into is that you see that you get all these. Again, if they're going to get ratings, then they're going to do it. And if 9 million people watch the thing, then it's like the Pro Bowl. Like keep doing what you're doing because you're making money.
Yeah, I watched a lot of it on mute because I just couldn't stand the back and forth banter. And again, anytime Roger Goodell came up on camera, it was just like, okay, all right, why don't you go back and lie about Deflategate more, and then tell us how you don't like having teams investigate themselves, and then we'll have a discussion. But all right, enough about that because I could go on and on about my complaints, what grinded my gears about that. But I do want to talk about because, of course, even among the NFL honors was the announcement of the Hall of Fame class of 2022, which this is something obviously is always going to draw a discussion because every fan base is going to feel slighted every single time. This is the worst class ever. Oh, this guy deserves to get in. There's this push, or there's been this recent need for folks to get in first ballot because somehow that tends to mean more. But in reality, it's just like that old saying, like, hey, the person who graduated first and last in their class at med school are both called doctors. I mean, it's the same thing. Like, it doesn't matter if you get in your first year of eligibility or your 20th year of eligibility. At the end of the day, you're still a Hall of Famer. And that doesn't change. So people are like, oh, I can't believe Devin Hester. No, look, Devin Hester needs to wait his turn. You know what I mean? Like, I was generally very happy. Obviously, it was great to see Richard Seymour get in, former Patriot. I think his career has been greatly underappreciated because, again, in the era of stats, he doesn't have them, but his impact was, I mean, you can't overstate his impact. And very conveniently, another guy on this Hall of Fame class is the same exact way, and that's Bryant Young. Like, I've obviously been fortunate to be around people that have watched and covered him and have been able to speak to him. What he was able to do among a team with plenty of superstars was incredible. And the folks that played against him who talk about him, back that up. So this idea, people are sitting here talking about, oh, these guys, what a terrible Hall of Fame class, this, that, and the other. It should have been Zach Thomas. It should have been this. It's like, give the guys some time. Like, give it some time. They'll get a chance. They'll get their opportunity. I mean, Sam Mills, 20th year. This was his last year. And folks are up in arms about, oh, he didn't really have. Well, guess what? I mean, the USFL existed. Go back and look at his numbers, his first 3 seasons in the USFL. This isn't the NFL Hall of Fame. This is the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So, again, I understand why people get upset. I understand why there's backlash in any sense. I mean, there's very rarely going to be a class where you're not going to sit there and say, oh, this guy deserved to get in over the other. And, maybe you can make a case for Rondé Barber. But, here's the thing, that just means he's getting closer. And he has plenty of time left to make it into this class. So overall, though, you got Richard Seymour, Tony Baselli, Leroy Butler, Bryant Young, and Sam Mills as the modern era class. And then, there's obviously 3 additional candidates, and it goes Dick Vermeil coaching, Art McNally from the contributor class, and then Cliff Branch as the senior candidate. And as we know, the senior pool, and as we say on the eye test for 2, is kind of the abyss, because once you run out of your modern era eligibility, you get thrown into a mix of players that each and every year, more of them get forgotten because of the younger group of people that have never heard of them or never seen them. And so, for those up in arms about Devin Hester not getting in, I'd rather put Sam Mills in if he deserves it, and I think he does, before he runs out of eligibility. Devin Hester can wait. Like, I think Devin Hester was great, and I think he should eventually get in because of how great he was at what he did. And to me, that is a Hall of Famer. Like, I know people are like, "Oh, why are kickers should no kicking field goals is a part of the game. If you were great at doing that, you deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. Same for any specific role that you have. If you're a special teams guy and you did it at an elite level, Matthew Slater, you should be a Hall of Famer. So I'm not saying Devin Hester shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame, but it shouldn't be looked at as a slight against him that guys that are equally as deserving, like Sam Mills, gets in over him. Because I'd rather Devin Hester wait a little bit than watch Sam Mills just disappear and never be talked about again. And maybe 10 years down the road, maybe he gets in on the senior ballot, but the chances of that are very slim. So, like I said, overall, I was happy with the class. I think this is a good opportunity to, for the first time, in I think 10 years, we don't have a first ballot Hall of Famer, but I think we have 5 very deserving candidates, a couple that were long overdue, in my opinion. And, a guy like Tony Baselli is another example of maybe not the longest career, but his impact and his, the way he played and how he dominated in that short period of time before injuries shortened his career, speaks to his Hall of Fame candidacy. And again, it's not easy to get in on a short career. Like, I understand that it's going to take you a little bit more to convince the voters, and I think that's what happened with Tony Baselli. But I think 5 very worthy candidates. You can make an argument again for some other guys to get in, but they'll have their shot. They'll have their turn. These same guys that people are complaining about not getting in the Hall of Fame were in the same position 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when they were getting passed up based on their credentials because, maybe this hot name or more recent name came into play and they took their spot. So, I guess I'll stop talking and let you say.
Yeah, that might be a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a lot of
shower. I put my clothes on. I'm all ready to go now. What were you talking about? By the way?
I got a lot of thoughts. John.
I do. I think you need a therapist as much as I need a therapist. So that might
hey, no doubt, man. I am
go
not.
For it, man.
I am not ashamed to admit that. Like, I certainly am not all there mentally. So,
see, and cats aren't talking back to you. See, those cats just aren't talking back to you. Well, actually, if the cats start talking back to you, then definitely.
I have one cat that talks back to me. Actually.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I find myself having conversation, and then I have to stop, and I'm like, "What am I doing? What am I doing here?"
That's the alpha cat, right? That's the one that's the
no. That's
no.
The alpha's fairly quiet. This is the fat, goofy one that trips over her own feet.
Yeah. Fat and goofy usually lead to good personality.
Yeah, exactly.
The player I was most happy for, and he died 2 years ago, unfortunately, was Cliff Branch, who got in the Veterans Committee because I'm good friends with Ron Borges, and Ron's always, kind of pushed for Cliff Branch because he covered the Raiders when Branch was there. Branch had better numbers in his career than Lynn Swann. I mean, actually not even close. He also won 3 Super Bowls, and generally you don't put wide receivers in because they won Super Bowls, or they didn't win Super Bowls. So I was just really happy that Cliff Branch made it. I believe now there's like 7 Raiders from the early to mid, almost late 70s that are in the Hall of Fame, just on the offensive side of the ball. That's pretty amazing. But you know what? These guys deserve it, whether it be Branch, Bolitnikoff, Casper as wide receivers and tight ends, and the 3 offensive linemen are in there. Art Shell, Gene Upshaw, and Jim Otto. You got Kenny Stabler is in there as well. So, I mean, just a plethora of these Raiders players that were, Hall of Fame worthy. Not all of them fit the bill. So I was happy for Cliff Branch as much as anyone else. And to your point about Tony Baselli, it's tough to ever knock a player for a somewhat short career in a sport that the average career is about 3 years.
Well,
I mean, it's
and
you know
and
what I'm saying?
real quick, the circumstances in which he had to retire was a botched
Right.
medical procedure. So
Exactly.
this wasn't him walking away or just being a chronic injury problem. Like, no, this was a screw up on behalf of the team that he played for, and it greatly reduced his career.
The next guy I'm really pumping, and it shouldn't surprise you, he's a Green Bay Packers, Sterling Sharp, who played only 7 or 8 years, but for that period of time, he was clearly like the second best receiver in football behind only Jerry Rice. And he actually, some years, had even better numbers than Jerry Rice, and he was putting them up before Brett Favre got to Green Bay. I think Sterling Sharp should join his brother Shannon in the Hall of Fame at some point, but it always seems like he falls short or doesn't make the finals list. And I'm not sure when he would go to the Veterans Committee, but I think he's a guy who deserves to be in Canton. Sterling Sharp for sure.
Yeah, I would, trying to do the math in my head. I mean, he retired. Oh God,
He retired in '94.
Yeah, I was going to say. He might already be in that season. He would already be in the Senior Bowl.
He might be, yeah,
because it's 20 years. It's 20 years after the 5. So what did you say? 90? What was it? 94?
I think he played through '94. He was drafted in '88, so that would be
he's already there then, because it would be 5 years. It's the countdown starts at 5 years. Obviously, when you become eligible is 5 years after you retire, and then 20 years after that is when you run out of modern era eligibility. But no, and to that point, going back to sticking with the Packers. I saw a pushback about Leroy Butler. How could Leroy Butler get in over Rondé? Well, guess what? Leroy Butler is the only member of the 70s and 80s all-decade team that have yet to be elected to the Hall of Fame. How is he not a legitimate candidate? So that's what I'm saying. Like, there's always going to be pushback from fans that are obviously, and I get it. You're rooting for your guy. I think there's got to be more. There's got to be a little bit more objectivity when we're going through some of these things, because it's not just fans, but you're seeing some even like media from certain areas, like just basically downplaying the careers of these other guys. When you sit there and say that Richard Seymour and Bryant Young aren't Hall of Fame eligible, that just, you expose yourself as someone who doesn't really know what they're talking about. Because you can think that your guy deserves to be in the Hall of Fame without sitting there and telling me that 2 Hall of Famers are not Hall of Famers, because they are. They are, John, and it drives me nuts. So, no, it was, it was something that obviously, was kept under wraps very well by the committee, because, again, they actually voted on this weeks ago, and considering how things are done now with the Zoom conferences and stuff like that, normally these votes would be done prior to, so there wouldn't be any sort of hiding of these results. But, for the sake of, doing this all weeks ago and then having it not come out until now was pretty impressive on their part. So, so I mean, look, I was happy with it. I'm excited for it. Next year is going to be interesting. You have guys like Darrelle Revis, first time eligible. I think he might have an outside shot to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. Although, again, you might have a very similar class as what you had this year, where it's like maybe some people feel it's a little bit underwhelming, but you have a lot of deserving guys that have been looked over, and the longer and longer that we go, the less likely it is they're going to make it, because more and more folks that watch them play are no longer around and no longer there to advocate for them. So, So anyways, John, after all that, I think I talked about, I don't know, 28 of those 30 minutes. So let's get into the Super Bowl, because that's where we're at. We're 15 minutes away from the start of the weekend, and Super Bowl 56 between the Rams and of course Bengals, who they took home a lot of hardware yesterday, and rightfully so. And for those out there, and I saw people complaining, oh, well, this wouldn't matter if Joe Burrow wasn't in the Super Bowl. No, these votes happened before, so this has nothing to do with where each team is currently, and that is waiting for the Super Bowl. It just speaks to the greatness of the seasons that these players had. I mean, Jamar Chase, Offensive Rookie of the Year, rightfully so. I thought at one point, one point, Mac Jones was a good candidate, but his play, I'm not going to say it dropped off. I just think, again, you can only maintain so much. He's got to get better, and we've talked about this before. But Jamar Chase, great choice for Offensive Rookie of the Year. Micah Parsons, unanimous. I mean, there's no doubt about that. But you go to Joe Burrow, comeback player of the year. Absolutely. Absolutely. I saw people, he's only getting it because no, he's getting it because he had a great season following a devastating injury, and he deserves it. Cooper Kupp, Offensive Player of the Year. Andrew Whitworth ended up taking over the Walter Payton Man of the Year award, which is a cool thing, because obviously I think we all expect Sunday to be his last game, 40-year-old offensive lineman, and for him it would be great to go out on top, but we'll see. And so I mean, look, we'll go through this again next year. We'll have these debates next year. I mean, again, assuming Tom Brady's playing in San Francisco and leading the 49ers to the Super Bowl.
I wouldn't bet against it. I mean, why not?
Look, most of that is me just like, I want to see him keep playing. And if he goes to San Francisco, I think they're the best team in the NFC because of what they have on both sides of the ball. And then you add Brady into the mix. It's just, to me, it would just be like, wow. But, so we'll be having these discussions next year as well, I'm sure. But, anyways, going into the Super Bowl, we talked Wednesday, we gave our top 10 offensive players. Yesterday, we gave our top 10 defensive players. And all week, we have been talking about how we have no clue, no idea, no feeling as to what's going to happen in this game. And up until now, I still really don't necessarily know, although I'm starting to just take the plunge, and I'm going to go with what my gut's telling me, John. And I'm gonna work you through the process of how my gut works, okay? Coming into immediately after the conference championship games, I'm looking at it, I'm like, this is going to be a Rams anointment ceremony. One of those like, okay, the matchup is there, it could be good, but this is going to be Celtics Lakers circa 2008. Game 6, about 10 minutes into the third quarter, the victory celebration was on, and that's how I kind of felt this Super Bowl would go. And I'm like, okay, that's it. Hopefully, we can at least get entertaining part, for most of the game, and then whatever, it'll be a victory lap for the Rams. But since over these last almost 2 weeks, I've continued to just get pulled in the opposite direction. I don't know what it is. Like my gut, my head, my joints. Again, maybe that's just a sign of getting older, but all those things were trying to tell me something. And I think what it was trying to tell me was, well, the Bengals are the team that's going to end up winning this game. And that's what I'm going to end up picking is the Cincinnati Bengals, John. And if you would have asked me 2 weeks ago, I would have said 90%, 10% Rams over the Bengals. And the more I think about it, the build up for this game, the expectations for the Rams, and this just unnerving feeling that, again, maybe this is just me clinging on to a prediction I made back in November, that the only thing that's going to stop this Rams team is a poorly timed interception by Matt Stafford. And I just can't help but think that's finally going to happen. He's had 2 relatively clean, very good games leading up to the Super Bowl against obviously the Buccaneers, and then last week against the 49ers. I feel like at some point the pressure is going to get to him, and he's going to make a mistake. And to me, I think both teams are going to make mistakes, but if you're going to ask me which one's going to overcome them, I think it's the Bengals, easily. If you're going to tell me that both teams are going to turn the ball over early, and I'll ask you this, John, and maybe you have a different answer, but which team do you feel better about weathering the storm?
I would feel better about I would feel better about
the quarterback. Yeah,
because of the quarterback. Because Joe Burrow just strikes me as a guy like Tom Brady who could throw a pick six in the second quarter and then just light it up in the second half, right? Just not even put that on the back burner. And that's the weakness of Aaron Rodgers. I think if he throws a pick six, which he's only thrown 3 in his entire career, he he kind of lets it get in his head and isn't the same quarterback after that. Burrow almost seems like he's empowered by it.
Yeah.
It's almost like, oh, really? I screwed up? Okay. We'll take care of that the next 30 minutes. Brady's the best I've ever seen in just about any sport to do that type of thing. Where Stafford, you could see him maybe getting off a little bit, although he did throw a really bad interception against the 49ers early in the NFC Championship game, and I think he kind of shook it after that, but he should have thrown another pick, which would have turned the whole game around if the defensive back of San Francisco just handles what looked like a fair catch, looked like a punt that went to him and he dropped it. That could have turned that whole game around.
And that's a case too. It's like, look, I like Jimmy G. I'm not someone who thinks he sucks, but I also understand that the 49ers are held back by the quarterback position.
Mm-hmm.
And
absolutely.
And to me, again, that's why, I'm we'll see what happens during the offseason, but I would, as a Brady fan, would love to see him. Yeah, I'm actually hearing that talkative cat outside my door right now yelling at me. So it's almost time to get off the air so I can tend to her needs. But that's why it's like if I see Tom going to San Francisco, I'm like, that's the team in the NFC to beat, because
absolutely,
if again, I don't think. Yeah, I'm sitting here saying, oh, if they had Tom Brady. Well, I think San Francisco was in better shape overall heading into their game against LA than clearly the Bucs were. And so he did throw that bad interception. You're right. I don't know. Like, I think he shook it off because, well, again, you didn't have Tom Brady on the other side. I think you feel a little bit better knowing, well, it's Jimmy Garoppolo. And again, this isn't an insult on Jimmy Garoppolo. This is just understanding that he's limited in what he can do. And I do think that, like, he has held this 49ers team back. I mean, that's just my opinion. I may be wrong. But I think ultimately, Matt Stafford does throw an interception in this game. And Joe Burrow will make him pay. And this offense will make him pay. I think they have a better running game with Joe Mixon, better running back. As great as Cooper Kupp is, Jamar Chase is as good, if not better. And you have equally as talented offense across the board. So to me, I'm going with the team that's probably feeling a whole hell of a lot less pressure, and with a quarterback that my gut tells me is that type of player under pressure. I don't get that same feeling.
Say that again?
I said I feel like Joe Burrow is the kind of guy that is going to perform under pressure, Siri. For the love of God, pay attention to what I'm saying. Oh my. I hope that actually came across on the microphone, so it just doesn't sound.
It did.
Okay, good.
Oh, I heard.
Okay, good. I didn't want to think people were just thinking I was talking to some fictitious person sitting next to me. But no, my gut's telling me that the Bengals, when things don't go right, I think the Bengals are going to overcome that far more than what the Rams are. And again, this is specifically and generally, but more specifically talking about the quarterback position. So, John, my final score. Bengals 31, Rams 27. The Bengals, the Cincinnati Bengals, and I hope Mike Straw is listening to this, because you'll like this. The Cincinnati Bengals are going to win the Super Bowl. What say you, John?
I agree. I don't think it's going to be as high scoring. I think the first quarter will be a little bit choppy. Obviously, a feeling out process, and just the whole pace of the game is strange, right? With the 32-minute halftime show and how the teams react to that. We know the Rams were there 3 years ago with Sean McVay. I think they'll be better prepared than they were 3 years ago. Well, McVay felt that he was over-prepared. Like he just was, and that's happened. You ever go into a test where you're over-prepared and you just freeze? I think that's what happened with McVay, who was clearly out-coached 3 years ago by Belichick. But I like the Bengals in this game 24-20, same victory margin as you, Ian, except I think it's going to be a little lower scoring. I do worry about the Bengals offensive line against the Rams defensive line. I think that's a major, major concern. But you know what it is, Ian? The Bengals are creating a lot of turnovers. They had 2 pickoffs of Patrick Mahomes in the AFC Championship game, 3 against Ryan Tannehill in the divisional round. And we know that turnovers can come in bunches. And it just seems like they're that team that creates turnovers and makes that team pay. And I think you make a great point. Garoppolo being, a solid quarterback, whereas Burrow is an exceptional quarterback. The 49ers had chances to be up by more than 17-7 going into the fourth quarter, right, in that NFC Championship game. if the Rams play like they did in the first 3 quarters of the NFC Championship game, Joe Burrow will have them up by more than 10 points, and they're not coming back from that. So I like the Bengals 24-20 because, first of all, we both are big Joe Burrow fans. I think, he's kind of a breath of fresh air, the way he kind of handles himself. I really like it. And why not? I mean, it's been a bizarre year with the Bucs winning the NBA championship. Why not have the Bengals win the Super Bowl? That sounds good to me.
Exactly. So with that said, that's our picks. And we said it before the air. We didn't get a chance to, but we will. Well, maybe on Monday, maybe on Tuesday, we'll have to kind of see what happens. But we will certainly get around to talking about that NBA trade deadline yesterday, which was pretty crazy. But that's going to do it for us here today. That's going to do it for us here this week. This is going to do it for us here during this NFL season. So thank you, everyone who's tuned in throughout the year to listen to us basically yell back and forth about Brady and Rodgers and some other things throughout the course of the season, but mostly that. We will obviously be back on Monday to break down the Super Bowl, and then, obviously start looking forward to the offseason. We have the draft, free agency, NBA playoffs, NHL playoffs, all that stuff coming up. Maybe eventually baseball comes back. I don't know yet. We'll talk about all that starting next week, and of course, breaking down what we saw in the Super Bowl, and then I will start putting my conspiracies about Tom Brady coming back into motion as much as I possibly can. Tune in Sunday. We are, and that is FPC NFL Sunday, going to be live at 11 a.m. right here on Twitter, and of course on our YouTube channel. So if you haven't already, go to youtube.com/C/Full Press Coverage. And subscribe, check out all of our videos. We got a lot of great stuff up there. And we'll be live Sunday morning to give you your first taste of the Super Bowl as we get ready to watch Bengals and Rams. And I guarantee you my pick will not change by then. I've locked it in. I've put it in. I put my name to it, and that's what it's going to change. Bengals 31-27. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We'll talk to you on Monday.